Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to DIMH. Right now, I'm going to be interviewing Thom Langford, who is a global security advocate at SentinelOne. So, thank you for your time, Thom, and thanks for speaking with us as an ex-CISO and various things that you're up to these days. So, I wanted to know if you could just jump in and give us a sense of your background and how you ended up where you are with your career.
Yeah, certainly. So I've always been in IT and technology pretty much since, well, even while I was at school, for instance, it was many years ago. But it was 2008 that I saw a gap in the company I was working at that I felt needed to be filled. And cut a long story short, built the security organization there. Went through a few iterations of that. The company was then acquired by a large multinational communications, media, marketing holding company, where I was then transferred across to be the CISO of that company, where I was for 4 years. And then I took a stab at some security consulting of my own. And finally, I've rocked up with SentinelOne, basically doing what I really love, which is the public speaking, the evangelizing, the education of people. It's an opportunity for me to really speak directly to well, be it clients, be it other security professionals. I really enjoy I enjoy the theatre of it to a certain extent. I love the standing up in front of people, but I love the way that you can take complex ideas and reduce them down to a story or a joke or just something that's memorable. But actually, what you're doing is you're putting a very valid point across that people will take away with them and use. And I find that well, both rewarding and fascinating.
Amazing. Okay. So, well, I look forward to hearing a couple gems, that's for sure, and breaking it down for us because in mental health we are not exactly at the level of where you are. But it's interesting that you can see, in our conference, it's about digital mental health, and we're going into cybersecurity, data protection in these spaces for this theme, and you're really seeing both sides of this. So it's a very I think it's a very important connection that you're able to make. So I wondered if you could tell us about how they come together or your experiences in that.
Yeah, so I think, as a CISO of a very large organization, at the time it was 85,000 people, 109 countries, etc.
Wow.
Um, of an organization that size and dealing with thousands of clients and thousands of suppliers and vendors and thousands of people, frankly, um, there are incidents of varying degrees constantly. There's a constant flow of incidents.
Yeah.
Um, Vast majority of them very minor, just get dealt with in a few hours, half a day, or whatever. But occasionally you get the larger ones. I mean, the largest one I was involved in took over 3 months to address, cost $8 million. A
Gosh.
lot of late nights, a lot of travel, a lot of secrecy, and working what we call sort of out of pocket, as it were. So leading almost like a double life.
Mm,
Um, and you can see the effect that has on the people around you as well, and the fact that they're away from their families 7 days a week for a couple of months at a time, or they're traveling for 2 months at a time, or it's just living under that constant threat that one misstep would mean this incident becomes newsworthy. It becomes front page news and will cause massive problems. So it's a very stressful environment,
mm,
a real sort of pressure cooker environment where, like I said, the slightest misstep can cause quite significant issues and
mhm.
challenges for the organization as a whole. So that's the one side that that I think sort of being in a position of responsibility for people in those kinds of environments and teams and managing that sort of thing. The
Mhm.
flip side is I also suffered personally. So the CISO role, again, it brings its own pressures. I know end of 2017 I had my own breakdown, took some time out, was supported very well by my line manager,
Mm.
my organization. And by support, I mean they pretty much left me alone to get on and do it. There was no pressure, there was nothing, there was no
Right.
sort of judgment or anything. It was just go away, get better, come back, which was fantastic. And I actually wrote about it, and I'm sure you'll provide links and stuff like
Yep.
that, the links I've already shared with you. I wrote about it at the beginning of 2019. And interestingly, the support, well, it was one, completely supported by everybody who responded to me. There was no negative comments at all, which in this day and age is quite amazing. But
Yeah.
everybody was very, very understanding, supportive. Could either said that was me, so however many years ago, or that was my work colleague, or that was my partner, or that was a close friend of mine, etc. I know exactly what it was like. And and again in that immediate aftermath, the number of people who'd even walk up to me at conferences and events and would say, thank you for putting this out there,
Wow.
because I feel like I'm not alone anymore. And and it's also, God, if people are looking at me for that kind of thing, blimey, they must have been in a dark place. So it's something that I felt that I held on to for 15 months or so because professional pride and all that sort of stuff. But once I let go of it and once I let it get out there, a variety of circumstances and reasons, the power it held over me just diminished completely to zero. And it got to the point where frankly I'm very happy talking about it. Never one to be the poster child of this sort of thing,
Mhm.
but I do think that if there is a an opportunity to discuss it, an opportunity to be open about it, and show people that it happens. Well, I would say to the best of us, but again, if you think I'm in that league, you really are, and also in a dark place. But but very much, it happens even at what is ostensibly the pinnacle of my career as a chief information security officer for a very large public company. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. What did I have to worry about? Apparently quite a lot. So yeah, that's the sort of the two aspects of this that I feel I can sort of talk to and bring to the table.
Mhm. And I just wanted to, like, I find this fascinating. And if if you could revisit this and jump in earlier to support yourself, how would you have changed that trajectory or put in things to kind of support yourself or the future someone, to change that outcome?
I would have asked for help. I would
Okay.
have shared my concerns either with a healthcare professional, or even some kind of counselor or something like that, or even more with my friends and family. But it's just one of those things that I think the challenge we face in the information security industry is that we deal in keeping things private, keeping things secret,
Mm,
making sure that information and sensitive information and confidential stuff doesn't get out into the open. We deal in secrets. We're measured on failure, i.e.,
mm,
you only ever hear about us when something goes wrong, not, Bank X was not hacked again this month. It's, Bank X was hacked again this
mm,
month, that sort of thing. And so it's quite a toxic environment to go to come from. So you kind of keep it bottled up and you don't want to share it. You don't want those who you're being paid by to protect their secrets to know that frankly you're vulnerable and that you're struggling, and your imposter syndrome is exploding all the time, and you think that it's all going to go horribly wrong and it will be entirely your fault and all that stuff. And it just snowballs from there, and it just gets harder and harder to address. So I think at the broadest level, it would be just to share it and proactively deal with it.
mhm,
Could be with a spouse, could be with a friend, could be with your deputy CISO, or it could be with, someone else in the industry that you know and trust, a mentor of some description. It doesn't matter, but just share it and get some perspective on what it is that you're feeling.
Mhm. And so coming at it from a mental health perspective, whether we be thinking about depressive symptoms, anxieties, or trauma, PTSD, OCD, all kinds of different things. Can you walk us through a couple examples, not necessarily of your own, but if you've been there for other people who have reached out to you, how do these different types of things, even substance misuse, how does that relate to the pressure, and how does that impact the different tasks that you would have to do in that role?
Yeah, so I think again, and I'm probably looking more at myself. I mean, my story is out there; it's already been told as such. But I very much. I mean, I'm going to say substance abuse, which automatically throws all sorts of thoughts out there. But it was basically free alcohol, And so for me, it was the alcohol that did it. So as an industry, and when we talk about conferences and events and things like that, there's free booze everywhere, absolutely everywhere. And as a CISO, you get invited to a lot of things. I could virtually have eaten breakfast, lunch, and dinner 5 days a week if I really tried hard enough. Not quite, but there's always an event to go to, or there's always something to be invited to, etc. And then combined with, in my case, it was a quite a tough travel schedule. Well, when you're traveling, what else have you got to do? You go to the lounge and there's free booze there, and you get on the plane and there's free booze there, and then you get to where you're going and you take the team or the client out and there's free booze there, and
Mm.
before you know it, it's you're doing it because you're stressed. It's a great way to relax. I mean, I used to love drinking. Don't get me wrong; it was fantastic, But you know, you're doing it to relax, etc. But then it becomes its own crutch and its own problem in of itself. And it was at September. I can even say September 10th, 2017, was when I had my last drink, and I actually thought. And I've not really missed it since. I mean, it's been lockdown, right? We've had our moments, but well, yeah, haven't missed it at all. But that was
Wow.
unthinkable for me because it was my main crutch to lean upon during the stressful times, and it was also a sign and a way to cope with all of these different pressures and all of these different, this schedule and things like that. And I've noticed it amongst uh, certainly since sitting on the outside of that alcohol bubble, for want of a better phrase.
Yeah.
Certainly noticed it since. I can. I probably know, and they will admit it themselves as well. I know at least three or four functioning alcoholics out there, in the industry, at least if not more. Um, and that's not a judgment by any stretch of the imagination. If they can make
Hmm.
it work for them, then great. It's just that I couldn't. It got to the point where I couldn't. So, you know, environments like, and again, I talked about that pressure cooker environment, but
Yes.
environments in which we find ourselves where the the default position is to throw at booze and alcohol and free food and all that sort of stuff at people. It does. It's a bit of a risky recipe, for want of a better term, or exacerbating what could potentially be a manageable situation, but allowing it to snowball into something bigger.
Yep. And how this is very relevant, obviously, to mental health, but thinking of protective environments and protective factors. So you mentioned support and having that support from others being really important. What other factors helped you sort of switch away from your other habits?
So one, it was I went through. It was a very emotional and physically scary moment that I went through. So it was a classic wake up call.
Yeah.
So it could have gone one of two ways, and thank goodness it went this way. Bottom
Yeah.
line, but it was. I would strongly suggest not doing that. Well, for a start, it's bloody dangerous. You know, So, and in fact, I even joke about that in my writing. But it was only the fact that I hit absolute rock bottom that I was able to sort of come around. And even then, that took a good few months and to change some bad behaviors or damaging behaviors, I should say, within myself. So for me, unfortunately, because I got myself into that position, I was very fortunate that I was able to get out, and I can see that many people can't or won't. So I think, yeah, for me, it was having that moment of clarity that, like I say, could have gone one of two ways.
Hmm. And when you were faced with the same sort of situations, but you had a different mindset, how did you handle the travel? How did you handle the alcohol, the free food? How did you reframe your approach to that?
Well, at first, it was actually quite challenging. You try networking with a bunch of people without a few beers inside you, or without something something to give you that little bit of Dutch courage. So I left a lot of events early,
Yeah,
a lot of networking events early. Um, I think the other thing, the and one of the challenges was, and again, it's changing, but certainly back then, going to an event and saying, "Do you have an alcohol-free beer?" Nope. Do you have any Diet Coke? Nope. Okay, I'll have a sparkling water. Nope. What have you got? Orange juice. Well, I can't have anything with too much sugar in it. What else is there? Water. It's really, so and that has changed, and I have made some comments, and comments to in good faith, and in openly with certain organizers, and it has changed. But certainly, it's difficult to make that transition when there is nothing there to help you through it, if you see what I mean.
yeah,
But conversely, I've also, and who knew that these folks were around me, right? But I've also know apparently a lot of people who never did sort of drink or never did sort of go into that in a big time. And you start to surround yourself with those people and
mm,
hang around with those people. You're creating your own environment and your own sense of confidence and your own ability, your own sort of sphere of well-being. Um, and it works out really well. And it's like, oh, this is dull, this, isn't it? Yeah, yeah. All right, let's go off for dinner somewhere, and it's you're creating your own party, and
yeah,
that in itself is really good. And in fact, it's I remember one time we did it. And then everybody started to follow us. It's kind of like, oh, where are you going? That looks fun. That sounds good. So it just goes to show that you don't need all this stuff that is artificially thrown and thrust upon you, the alcohol, the demands to have a great time, the demands to, let's have more wine for the table, more this, more that, more, that thing of excess, that kicking off, and away from the home, and the hustle and bustle of home life and all that sort of thing. We're going to kick off, and actually, whilst initially that's actually quite how can I put it? That's actually quite sort of scary in a sense. Actually, you can
mhm.
find your own way in that place. And if you just find one other person who's doing the same thing as you, you're away. You got it sorted. You know.
That's awesome. That's really, really powerful. And now I'm going to switch gears a little bit because one of the major things that we're finding in digital mental health spaces is issues with sleep during the pandemic. And you touched on that. And then you mentioned things like the weight of the world on your shoulders with secrecy, with responsibility. How how can you make that work? How can you, obviously we've discussed substance misuse and things like that, so that will change sleep, but can you just go through how that process of the quality of your sleep and all the weight on your shoulders from that work you do?
Yeah. So I mean, my friends and I have this term of before and after for me. So it's drunk Tom and sober Tom. So so drunk Tom would wake up 15 to 20 times a night. It's
Wow.
partly because of travel, partly, mostly because of alcohol and stress, and all that sort of thing. But yeah, it was regular, and so constantly tired, constantly worn down, constantly on edge, constantly therefore wanting to have that, in my case, that extra drink or whatever, just to take the edge off.
Yeah.
Now, you know, easily single figures, less than five times, and that's and often once, and that once is because a man of a certain age just to nip to the loo overnight now, but um, but but so much better. And I think, so it's a couple of things. The stresses and strains of a CISO are manageable, but they can run away very quickly. So the job can sort of tick along very nicely, and it just will, almost like a sine wave, will go into
Mm,
extreme stress and then come down. And if you're not able to come down enough, the next time it goes up, it gets harder and then
mm,
harder again and harder again. And that's where the kind of the coping mechanisms or the bad coping mechanisms or dangerous coping mechanisms kick in. So for me, when one of those key coping mechanisms was taken away, or I decided not to encourage it, that actually helped immensely, and it became a lot more. I mean, I don't want to say, you know, um, not less worried about it, but it flashed into my mind. Well, nobody's died. Do you know what I
mm,
mean? And not everybody's lucky enough to be in an industry where that doesn't happen, right? And I totally get that. But it's just that silly sort of, oh my God, this has happened. It's all going to go wrong, and I'm going to get fired, and or my team's going to get slammed. So really, it's fine. We'll deal with it. We'll
yeah,
deal with the problem in front of us. We'll do what we can. We'll do our jobs properly and all that thing. But so I totally get how easy it is that these problems become inflated,
yeah,
that you lose sleep, you can't concentrate, you can't do anything. But frankly, you take away some of those, negative behaviors, those poor coping mechanisms. Actually, you can put a lot of context inside, around what you're doing, and what you're doing and how you're doing it. And frankly, if you're in that kind of really negative environment where you are quite literally scared to fail, and by fail I mean have something happen to you that's entirely beyond your control,
mm,
then you really should be looking elsewhere. One, for a better working environment, and two, for the benefits of your own, mental health and well-being.
absolutely, absolutely. Um, no, those are really important points. And another thing I was just thinking about is in mental health, we're seeing a lot of great things like campaigns and a lot of positivity around supporting it. But the stigma is still there.
Yeah.
It's a challenging thing. And so in a position where you are, leading security and things like that, how does that sit if someone yourself or someone has said, I have had some problems. How does that sit with from other people's perspectives in relation to stigma and let's say like privileged access to information and trying to keep things safe?
Do you mean how should they approach this problem, or
Yeah,
uh,
I do. I do. Yeah, like how do we get around the stigma of mental health, but and this jarring kind of association with only a few people can access things, and
yeah, this conflict of emotions that you're feeling. Well, I
yeah.
think, first off, I mean, obviously, conferences like this, and hopefully the audience, watching this, both people, will take this away. That's on me, not you. Sorry, I just realised what I said there. But hopefully, yeah. Oh God. But hopefully, what people will take away from conferences like this, for instance, is that actually it's important. If you break your leg, you don't work your way through it. You go and get it fixed. If you have a heart attack, well, that's perfectly acceptable to talk about. Yeah, my job was quite stressful and I had a heart attack. Well, you best take 6 months off and get better then. My job is quite stressful and I had a mental breakdown. Phew, you're just weak. And actually realizing that, frankly, that latter sentiment normally comes from people who really you should not be listening to and don't matter.
Mm,
And if that's your boss, then, to my previous comment, go look somewhere else.
mm,
Really, life's tough enough as it is. And certainly the last 18 months without having that kind of, environment to work in. So I think, and I think also, and part of the reason, and not the whole reason, but part of the reason why I'm quite so open about this. And again, I don't go out, I'm not the poster child for it. I don't go out and shout about it, but
Mm,
I'm very happy and open to talk about it, is because frankly, talking about it and being open about it takes all the power away.
mm,
Takes all the power away. People, again, we deal with secrets. And one of the reasons why I was open about it was I was just starting my own business. And what I didn't want was for a client to find out, a client of mine to find out halfway through, oh, you had some mental health problems. Should I really be, I
mm.
wanted it to be out there and open and, perfectly normalized, for want of a
Yeah,
better term.
yeah,
And, and again, part of that was due to my much better mental health, because I didn't have any of those coping mechanisms in place, or I wasn't, entertaining those coping mechanisms. It was just a case of, well, if I say it once, I don't have to say it ever again. In that sense, you only have to announce it once, right?
yeah,
Everything after that, or you only have to announce it the first time once, I guess is probably the right way of putting it. Every time after that is, well, it's old news.
yeah,
I'm just retelling what I've already said. And it just makes it so much easier. And I believe, the introduction, between the two of us, for instance, was from somebody who had read and has spoken to me about that whole period of time and what I was going through and all that sort of thing. And it's like, you know, actually, we should be making the most of these kinds of stories, rather than trying to sort of brush them under the carpet. And you know, but I'm also very conscious of, I don't want this to be a self-indulgent trip down, woe is me, nobody listened. Oh, it was so
mm,
tough being a CISO, when there are plenty of tougher jobs out there. Don't get me wrong, emotionally tougher jobs out there, but it almost, it doesn't matter if you broke your leg in a, you know, tripping over a curb, or or rescuing a grandmother from a house fire. You've still broken your leg. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't matter how how your mental health was broken. It's still broken. It doesn't matter that it's an easy job or whatever. It still hurts. It still has an effect. And that's what we should be dealing with, not the surrounding bull crap of, wow, what have you got to be
mm.
upset about? What have you got to be sad about? Jetting off around the world, and in business class, drinking your gold, your gold executive club free champagne and blah blah blah. I mean, trust me, it was terrible getting the corks out of those bottles sometimes, but it was but it was that wasn't the stressful part per se. That was just what was going on was the coping mechanism for the stressful part.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Now I'm going to kind of reposition as we sort of come to a close with the interview. So data protection, security, mental health, we've really covered these things so well. Now I want to bring in ethics into this a bit more. And in digital mental health spaces, behavioral monitoring, real-time tracking, mood analysis, all these kinds of things, especially in the workplace, we're starting to see more monitoring and tracking in workplace settings using various metrics. How do you feel about that sort of data being used in a workplace setting, and from all kinds of different perspectives, really?
So, as a technologist, I get it. If you can
Mhm.
measure something, you can deal with something. As a human being, I think it's a god awful idea. What it does is make up for poor management, poor line management,
Mm,
poor team building, the whole lot. Um, as anybody who is responsible for people, looking at their mood, or how much they worked, or how many words they typed out that day, or whatever, on a spreadsheet,
mm,
is zero substitute for actually talking to somebody in an open and honest and non-patronizing, non-condescending, and a caring manner. And that is what is being a manager is about, or being a team leader is about. So, you know, I could see where, and I don't even want to say a watered down version of it, but I could see where it could be supplemented in a very open and transparent way.
Mhm.
A good supplement to, oh, I see you had a bad couple of days. Everything all right? Can we help you with anything? I can see how it can be used like that. What's likely to happen is that it's just going to become management by spreadsheet rather than actually working,
Mhm.
collaborating, coaching, mentoring, inspiring of people. And I think that's where the technology, because let's face it, we use technology and it becomes the thing that we're reliant on at the end of the day. Sometimes it's great. Sometimes, I mean, let's look at the last 18 months and video conferencing and virtual conferences and all that sort of thing. That's a brilliant thing to come to rely on because I've, we'd have gone insane by now, right? So it's great. We're still able to connect together. It's no substitute, absolutely no substitute for, I used to rock up at an office and it was, hugs all round and hey, great to see you and all that. So you're not gonna, you miss that, even that, you know, where it's appropriate, that physical contact, even, be it a handshake or a hug or a fist bump or a high five, or what, it doesn't matter, but that kind of personal one-to-one contact is so vital. And I hope that anybody who's listening to this and watching this who's thinking that those kind of behavioral metrics are useful, maybe, but if you think you need those behavioral metrics to do your job better, you really need to take a look at how you're doing your job right now, because that's not the problem. The problem is more to do with you and how you operate.
Wow. Okay, Tom, I think we've got to end on that note. But if there's any other words that you wanted to say, by all means. But otherwise, that was really, really powerful. But if there's a last thing that you want to say, over to you. But okay.
Oh, I would just say, um, what do I say? Beg forgiveness, never permission. What else? Just work hard, play hard. There's no excuse for not working hard. Don't get me wrong. But and yeah, just stay secure.
Love it. All right. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.